Hi guys, I'm Sam.
I'm Garrett.
You're watching Adventure Vehiculist. Alright, now before you guys get too mad at me for doing what I'm doing to this thing, I want to have a little conversation with you about why I'm doing this. For one thing, this is part of my plan for how I'm going to save this car right here. I'm going to put this car back on the road and I'm going to drive it without the parts that I'm cutting off. Also, the parts that I'm cutting off are going to go to other people who have other cars, this same car, that are in even worse condition that really need this sheet metal that I'm cutting off. And this sheet metal that I'm cutting off is not really the sheet metal that I want, and I want the money to be able to throw at this project, put it together, and get this thing back on the road. It needs brake parts and suspension parts and a floor. And so I'm focused on the things that I want and need, and these parts just aren't that. So if you hate it, just remind yourself that it's not your car, it's my car, and I have a project, I have an idea in mind. If I could have found a rougher car to use for this project, I would have, but this is the car that I have, and honestly, it is pretty rough. The floors are rotted, everything I take apart is rusty and crusty. This thing has sat for a long time, and it needed someone to love it, it needed someone to put it back on the road, and that someone is going to be me. If I'm not doing it the way you would have, then you know what? You go buy yourself a 74 Ranchero and put it back on the road. I'd love to see it. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, let's go back to the cutting.
Yeah!
Alright guys, I had Garrett over the other day and I had him help me cut the quarter panels off, and it's looking real stubby now. Ever since then I've been working on these two steel pieces you see here. These are going to be the beginnings of the cab back. These are real thick steel. This is 14 gauge. You can see it's pretty beefy. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to weld all along the seam, and then I'm going to trim this section back a bit, and then we're going to carefully try to roll this lip over this like a seam, and then we'll weld it here, and then all this will get painted over eventually. This section here is going to get brought up as well to that same line. That's just a square panel that's going to be there. And then this panel here, the original cab back, will come out. That's just in there right now for some extra support, but eventually that will get removed. And this whole thing is going to have about 18 inches of extra space in the back, which is how much the floor pan leaves me. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it's coming out. It looks pretty cool from the side profile so far. I'm interested to see how it's going to look after I get it kind of rolled and tucked a little bit. But you guys are just going to have to stay tuned. I think this is going to be the end of this video, and I'm going to keep working on this thing and start getting another one done for you guys. Thanks for tuning in.